The breaking point. They never saw it coming. Not the Sakari Dominion with their hyper-advanced quantum technology. Not the Vren Collective with their hive-mind intelligence spanning 1,000 worlds. Not even the vaunted Galactic Council with their so-called enlightened perspectives, cultivated over millennia of space travel. For 3 centuries, humanity had been the galactic newcomers, tolerated, occasionally patronized, but never truly respected. They called us resourceful primitives to our faces and violent monkeys behind our backs. They gave us limited access to interstellar travel, restricted our colonization efforts, and kept us contained within a tight cluster of 27 systems, all in the name of galactic stability and evolutionary guidance. And we accepted it. We smiled at their diplomatic envoys, traded our raw resources for scraps of their technology, and built our modest confederation of colonies. We were grateful simply to be among the stars. We wanted to learn, to grow, to earn our place. Until the purge of New Eden. The agricultural colony of New Eden was humanity's most distant outpost, a terraformed paradise that had become home to 4 million settlers, scientists, farmers, teachers, families simply trying to build lives beneath alien skies. The colony posed no strategic threat, operated no military installations, developed no forbidden technologies. But it sat at the edge of a transit corridor that the Vren Collective suddenly decided they needed for exclusive use. There were no warnings, no evacuations, no diplomatic channels opened, just silence followed by screams followed by silence again. The official report from the Galactic Council called it an unfortunate territorial adjustment necessitated by evolving commerce patterns. The Vren representative, a 12-foot insectoid diplomat named High Synchronizer Tizkar, expressed regrettable but necessary action to ensure galactic prosperity. When the feed reached Earth and humanity's scattered colonies, we watched in stunned horror as the recording showed Tizkar's mandibles clicking in what his species considered a sympathetic gesture. Humans must understand that younger species sometimes require correction. The resonance of the whole must supersede singular discordant notes. On the bridge of the UES Harbinger, Commander Ilara Reeves watched that transmission 14 times in succession. She had family on New Eden, a sister who taught xenobiology, 2 nephews who had never seen Earth. Their faces were among the 4 million that haunted her dreams. Ilara wasn't a politician. She wasn't a diplomat. She was simply a transport vessel commander responsible for ferrying supplies between human settlements. Her service record was impeccable, if unremarkable. Nothing in her history suggested she would become the catalyst for what followed. But watching that final transmission from New Eden, seeing the orbital bombardment that vaporized continents in seconds, something fundamental broke inside her, something that could never be repaired. Record, she said quietly to the ship's eye. Authorization Reeves Delta 7 to 93. The bridge illuminated with a soft blue glow. This is Commander Ilara Reeves of the United Earth Ship Harbinger. As of 600 hours, I am formally seceding from the Earth Confederation fleet. Any crew who wish to disembark will be safely transported to Proxima Station with full honors. Those who choose to remain. She paused, studying the faces of her bridge crew. Those who remain will be part of something history will either condemn or celebrate, but will never forget. No one left. Not a single crew member. That night, the Harbinger disappeared from tracking systems. Within weeks, 11 other human vessels similarly vanished. The Galactic Council barely noticed. Why would they? Human ships were primitive, human weapons ineffective, human tactics predictable. Their surveillance systems were focused on the genuinely threatening species, the silicon-based Rodari, the chrono-manipulating Tashik, the energetic Vorlath. Humans were, at best, an afterthought. For 18 months, silence reigned. The Earth Confederation, under pressure from the Council, officially denounced the rogue elements that had abandoned their posts. Humanity continued to bow and scrape, continued to accept their assigned place in the galactic hierarchy. The Vren Collective expanded their new transit corridor, incorporating 3 more systems that had once been promised to human colonization. The Sakari Dominion imposed additional safety inspections on human vessels, citing concerns about technological responsibility. The Council passed new resolutions limiting human AI development, citing ethical concerns about our society's maturity. All were accepted with official diplomatic smiles and private, impotent rage. Then came the night of falling stars. The Vren home system was protected by the most advanced defensive grid in known space, a network of quantum-entangled sensors that could detect the approach of any vessel, regardless of stealth technology. Their home planet, Vrenka, housed over 30 billion of their kind in towering hive spires that stretched into the upper atmosphere. At precisely 3:27 Galactic Standard Time, every defensive satellite in the system simultaneously went dark. By 3:29, 12 unidentified vessels emerged from what scientists would later determine were artificially generated dimensional pockets, technology deemed theoretically impossible for centuries. By 3:35, the first kinetic penetrators, simple tungsten rods accelerated to 99.8% the speed of light, began striking Vrenka's surface. They carried no explosives, no nuclear warheads, no chemical agents. They didn't need to. At that velocity, each impact released energy equivalent to a small tactical nuclear weapon. The Harbinger, now nearly unrecognizable after its transformation, hovered in high orbit. On its bridge, Commander Reeves watched silently as the impacts continued. Her face showed no joy, no triumph, no satisfaction, only a cold, empty resolve. For New Eden, her executive officer whispered beside her. Ilara didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the view screen as she tapped a sequence on her command console. A final barrage of penetrators launched. These aimed with surgical precision at the spire housing the Vren Collective's leadership cast. As the massive structure collapsed in slow motion, she finally spoke. Send the message. Throughout the galaxy, on every emergency broadcast frequency, on every diplomatic channel, in every language recognized by the Galactic Council, the same transmission played. We will not be corrected. We will not be contained. We will not be called. For every human life you have taken, we will demand payment in kind. This is not war. This is consequence. The signature was simply, Humanity Unchained. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Sakari Dominion mobilized its fleet. The remaining Vren leadership called for immediate collective punishment against all human settlements. None of them understood what they were truly facing. Not yet. Because Commander Reeves and her growing fleet weren't just fighting with stolen and modified technology. They had found something else during those 18 months of silence, something hidden in the dark spaces between stars. The discovery came purely by accident. The Harbinger, running silent in an uncharted system to avoid detection, had detected unusual energy readings from an abandoned space station of unknown origin. Inside, they found no living beings, no recognizable technology. But they did find data. Immense, ancient archives that Ilara's science team spent months decoding. What they learned changed everything. Humanity wasn't the evolutionary accident the Council had always claimed. We weren't simply another species that happened to develop intelligence and technology. We were engineered, created and then abandoned by a species so ancient they had left the galaxy billions of years before any current civilization emerged. The precursors, as Ilara's crew came to call them, had seeded thousands of worlds with variations of genetic material. Most failed. Some developed into the current galactic species. But humans were different. We were designed as weapons. Our aggression, our adaptability, our inexplicable combination of empathy and cruelty. They weren't evolutionary flukes. They were features, carefully crafted and refined. We were living weapons created for a war so ancient that no trace of it remained except in the genetic memories buried deep within our DNA. And those memories could be awakened. The technology left behind on that station included activation protocols, ways to unlock capabilities that had lain dormant in human genetics for millennia. Not superhuman powers from fantasy, but heightened neural connectivity, accelerated adaptability, and most critically, an intuitive understanding of technology that should have been incomprehensible. By the time the Harbinger and its sister ships emerged from hiding, their crews had all undergone the activation process. They understood technologies the Council had deemed impossible. They saw patterns in reality that other species were blind to. And they were united by a singular purpose: to ensure that what happened to New Eden would never happen again to any human settlement. 3 days after the attack on Vrenka, as the Council was still debating its response, the second strike came. This time, the target was the Sakari shipyards at Dorelli Prime, where the Dominion was hastily preparing its war fleet. 7 ships appeared from nowhere, unleashed weapons that bent the laws of physics, and disappeared again, leaving nothing but debris and questions. The message was the same: this is not war. This is consequence. The Earth Confederation, caught between terror and awe, publicly denounced the attacks while secretly opening encrypted channels to Ilara's growing resistance. They feared what the Council might do in retaliation, and they were right to be afraid. The Council, led by the vengeful remnants of the Vren Collective, voted to implement preemptive security measures against all human settlements. In practice, this meant military occupation, forced relocation, and in some cases, orbital bombardment of colonies deemed potentially subversive. It was exactly the escalation Ilara had anticipated, exactly the response that justified what came next. As Council enforcement vessels approached the human colony on Ta City, they encountered something unexpected: a defense grid that hadn't existed days before, utilizing technology even the most advanced Council species couldn't comprehend. Their weapons were neutralized, their engines disabled, their communications silenced. And then the Harbinger appeared, now transformed into something barely recognizable as a human vessel. Its hull was integrated with the same strange, flowing material they had discovered at the precursor station, a substance that seemed alive, responding to thought as much as physical control. Ilara's face appeared on their view screens, her eyes now bearing a subtle luminescence that hadn't been there before. "You will release all human hostages," she said calmly. "You will withdraw from all human territories. You will acknowledge our sovereignty as equals in this galaxy, or what happened at Vrenka will seem merciful by comparison." The Council commander, a Sakari admiral with centuries of experience, tried to maintain his composure. "You cannot hope to stand against the united forces of the Galactic Council. Whatever advantage you currently possess is temporary. Surrender now, and perhaps your species will be shown leniency." Ilara's expression didn't change. "You still don't understand. We are not asking for terms. We are setting them." Behind her ship, a spatial anomaly began to form, a swirling vortex of energy unlike anything in the Council's scientific records. "This is your only warning," she continued. "The next demonstration will not be a demonstration. It will be extinction." As the Council fleet watched in stunned silence, the anomaly expanded, revealing glimpses of something massive moving within the distortion, something that should not exist in their understanding of physics and dimension. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council felt true fear. Not of humanity's weapons or technology, but of what we might become now that we had broken our chains, now that we remembered what we were created to be. Vengeance had awakened something far more dangerous than rage. It had awakened purpose. Vengeance unleashed. The news spread faster than any transmission had a right to travel. On every human colony, in hidden bases and Earth's underground networks, the stories grew. Commander Reeves became more than a military leader. She became a symbol. The woman who refused to bow, who awakened humanity's true potential, who brought the mighty Council to the negotiating table through sheer force of will. But symbols rarely match reality, and the reality of Ilara Reeves was far more complex than the legend. In her private quarters aboard the Harbinger, Ilara studied her reflection in the mirror. The luminescence in her eyes had grown stronger, a side effect of the precursor activation. She could feel the changes progressing through her body, through her mind. Enhanced neural pathways forming new connections daily. Intuitive understanding of concepts that would have been incomprehensible months earlier. And the dreams. Always the dreams. Each night, she saw fragments of the ancient war that had led to humanity's creation. Glimpses of enemies so alien, so utterly outside the context of known biology, that her mind struggled to process the images even with her enhanced capabilities. The precursors had engineered humans to fight something that existed partly in dimensions beyond normal perception. "Commander," her XO's voice came through the comm system. "The Council delegation has arrived. They're requesting permission to dock." Ilara took a deep breath, watching the subtle glow in her eyes pulse with her heartbeat. Permission granted. Standard security protocols. The diplomatic shuttle that docked with the Harbinger carried representatives from the three most powerful Council species, the remaining leadership of the Vren Collective, the High Chancellor of the Sakari Dominion, and the Elder Sage of the Marath Communion. Their security detail had been limited to 2 guards each, as specified in Ilara's terms. They found themselves escorted to a conference room that had been specifically designed to accommodate their varied physiologies, a detail that didn't go unnoticed by the delegates. The message was clear. Humans understood them better than they had ever bothered to understand humans. When Ilara entered, flanked by her senior officers, the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The Council representatives had expected a military commander, perhaps even a skilled tactician. What they saw instead was something their species recognized on a primal level, a predator. Not in behavior or demeanor, but in essence. "Welcome aboard the Harbinger," she said calmly, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I appreciate your willingness to meet without the full Council present. It suggests a genuine interest in resolution rather than political theater." The Sakari High Chancellor, a tall crystalline being whose translucent skin revealed complex energy patterns flowing beneath, spoke first. "Commander Reeves, let us dispense with diplomatic pretense. Your attacks on Vrenka and Dorelli Prime have demonstrated capabilities that should not be possible for your species. You have accessed prohibited technology of the highest order. The Council demands." "The Council," Ilara interrupted softly, "is not in a position to demand anything. Not anymore." She activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Human vessels, now all modified with the same strange, flowing material as the Harbinger, positioned near critical Council infrastructure, militarily significant systems, and even the homeworlds of Council species. While we've been speaking, 37 more ships from our fleet have moved into position. Each carries weapon systems that can bypass your defenses as easily as we bypass those at Vrenka. Each is prepared to inflict catastrophic damage at my command. The Elder Sage of the Marath, an ancient being whose species communicated primarily through pheromones and subtle color changes, shifted to a deep blue, a sign of profound distress. "This is genocide you threaten. Is this truly what humanity desires? To become the very monster you claim we are?" Ilara's expression softened slightly. "No, Elder Sage, genocide is not our goal. If it were, we would not be having this conversation. Your species would already be extinct." She deactivated the holographic display and leaned forward. "What we desire is recognition, equality, the freedom to develop without arbitrary restrictions imposed by species who fear our potential, and most importantly, accountability for the 4 million lives taken at New Eden." The Vren representative, a smaller member of their species who had been elevated to leadership after the attack, clicked his mandibles angrily. "You have already claimed 10 times that number in your attack on our homeworld. By your own standard of consequence, your vengeance is satisfied." Ilara's eyes flashed brightly for a moment, causing the Council members to flinch instinctively. "No," she said quietly. "What happened at Vrenka was not vengeance. It was demonstration. Vengeance would have been the complete sterilization of your world, the extinction of your species, the erasure of every trace of your civilization from the galaxy. She paused, letting the words sink in. That option remains available to us. The room fell silent. For centuries, the Council species had operated under the assumption that their technological superiority was unassailable. That assumption had been shattered in a matter of weeks. "What are your terms?" the Sakari Chancellor asked finally. "Complete autonomy for all human colonies, unrestricted access to all transit corridors, removal of all technology restrictions, full integration into the Galactic Council with equal voting rights, and..." Ilara paused, her voice hardening. "The individuals responsible for ordering the purge of New Eden will be surrendered to human justice." The demands were extraordinary. No species had ever been granted such concessions in the history of the Council, but the alternatives were unthinkable. One by one, the representatives agreed to bring the terms to their governments. As they prepared to leave, the elder sage of the Marath lingered. "Commander Reeves," the sage said, its skin shifting to a deep purple that indicated profound concern, "I sense something in you and your crew. Something beyond enhanced biology or advanced technology. You have found something ancient, haven't you? Something that should have remained buried." Ilara studied the ancient being carefully. The Marath were among the oldest species in the galaxy, predating even the formation of the Council. "You know about the precursors," she said. It wasn't a question. The elder sage's skin rippled with patterns that translated roughly to solemn acknowledgement. "Not their name or their specific history, but yes, we know that something came before, something that seeded the galaxy with possibilities. Weapons," its gaze fixed on Ilara's luminous eyes. "But Commander, weapons are created for a reason. Against an enemy. Have you considered what enemy required the creation of something as potentially devastating as humanity?" Before Ilara could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Her XO's voice came urgently through the comm system. "Commander, we're detecting massive dimensional distortions in multiple sectors, unlike anything we've seen before. It's as if something is tearing through from another reality." The elder sage's skin turned ash-white, a color Ilara had never seen in their species before. "It has begun," the sage whispered. "They have sensed your awakening." Within hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Massive structures were appearing in seemingly random locations, emerging from spatial tiers that defied the laws of physics. These structures were unlike anything seen before. Geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change when not observed directly, composed of materials that registered as both organic and inorganic simultaneously. And they were attacking everything indiscriminately. Council worlds, human colonies, even uninhabited systems. On the bridge of the Harbinger, Ilara reviewed the incoming data with growing horror. The precursor knowledge unlocked in her mind provided terrible clarity. These were the enemies her species had been engineered to fight. The precursors called them the Void Convergence, entities from a dimension adjacent to our own, who viewed our reality as territory to be conquered and harvested. The ancient war had never truly ended. The precursors had merely created a weapon, humanity, and then vanished, leaving their creation dormant until needed again. "We've awakened something terrible," Ilara whispered to her XO. "In our quest for vengeance, we've triggered exactly what the precursors designed us for." The realization was devastating. Everything. The attack on New Eden, the Council's suppression of human development, even the discovery of the precursor station. It hadn't been random. It had been the next step in a plan set in motion eons ago. Within days, the galaxy's political landscape transformed completely. The Council's forces, despite their advanced technology, proved almost useless against the Void Convergence. Their weapons passed harmlessly through the alien structures. Their defenses crumbled against attacks that seemed to ignore the normal rules of physics. Only the modified human ships, with their precursor-derived technology and awakened crews, could effectively engage the invaders, and there weren't nearly enough of them. Ilara found herself suddenly elevated from revolutionary to savior, from outcast to last hope. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very council that had suppressed humanity for centuries now begged for their protection. In an emergency session broadcast across all known space, the Galactic Council formally recognized humanity's sovereign status and pleaded for an alliance against the greater threat. The same Vren representative who had dismissed the destruction of New Eden as a necessary correction now spoke of humanity's essential and valued place in the galactic community. Aboard the Harbinger, now serving as the command center for the Unified Defense Force, Ilara watched the transmission with cold detachment. "They think this changes anything?" her XO asked, disgust evident in his voice. "After everything they've done." Ilara turned to the tactical display, showing the advancing void convergence forces. Already, 12 major systems had fallen completely. Billions of lives, human and alien alike, had been lost. "We have a choice to make," she said quietly. "We can continue our vengeance against the Council, a vengeance we've largely achieved, or we can fulfill the purpose we were apparently created for, and save a galaxy that may not deserve saving, including those who destroyed New Eden, those who would have continued to keep us leashed and controlled," her XO demanded. Ilara closed her eyes for a moment. In her mind, she saw her sister's face, her nephews, the billions of humans who had never asked to be weapons in an ancient war, who had simply wanted to live their lives among the stars. "The void convergence doesn't discriminate between guilty and innocent," she said finally. "If we do nothing, everyone dies, including what remains of humanity." She opened her eyes, the luminescence now pulsing with determination. "But if we win, we dictate the terms of what comes after. We ensure nothing like New Eden ever happens again." The combined fleet that assembled over the next weeks was unprecedented in galactic history. Council warships fought alongside human vessels, guided by the intuitive understanding of precursor technology that now flowed through awakened human minds. The battle strategies Ilara developed defied conventional military logic, incorporating dimensional mathematics and probability manipulation that only her enhanced neural pathways could fully comprehend. Under her command, the Allied forces began to push back against the void convergence, reclaiming system after system. But the cost was immense. For every victory, thousands of ships were lost. For every convergence structure destroyed, another would materialize elsewhere. And with each engagement, Ilara and her awakened crews pushed their enhanced capabilities further, accelerating changes that were not fully understood. 6 months into the war, during the pivotal battle of Proxima Centauri, Ilara made a discovery that changed everything. The Harbinger, now so heavily modified with precursor technology that it barely resembled a ship at all, detected a pattern in the void convergence's attacks, a mathematical signature that suggested a central controlling intelligence. If they could locate and neutralize that intelligence, the invasion might collapse entirely. The price of that discovery was catastrophic. The Harbinger took damage that should have destroyed it completely. Half its crew was lost, and Ilara herself was critically injured. As the medical team fought to save her life, her consciousness slipped into a space between dimensions, a place where the barriers between her mind and the precursor knowledge became non-existent. There, she understood at last. The void convergence wasn't simply an invading force. It was the counterpart to humanity's creation. Where humans had been engineered as weapons, the convergence had evolved as consumers of reality itself. Neither was inherently evil. Both were simply fulfilling their nature. And the precursors? They weren't benevolent creators or wise ancients. They were simply another species trying to survive, who had created humanity as a firebreak against extinction, and then abandoned their creation when it seemed the threat had passed. When Ilara regained consciousness 3 days later, her eyes had changed completely, now glowing with a continuous inner light that seemed to shift between colors that had no names in human language. "I know how to end this," she told her surviving officers. "But you won't like it." The plan was audacious, potentially suicidal, and morally complex in ways that stretched the boundaries of human ethics. It required the complete integration of precursor technology with human consciousness on a scale far beyond what they had already achieved. It meant potentially sacrificing what remained of their humanity to save all sentient life in the galaxy. "We were created as weapons," Ilara explained. "But weapons can choose their targets. Weapons can choose when not to fire. That's what separates us from the void convergence, our capacity to choose." The modified Harbinger, now less a ship than a manifestation of precursor technology controlled by human consciousness, approached the dimensional tear that Ilara's calculations indicated was the primary access point for the convergence's controlling intelligence. Around her, the combined fleet of human and council vessels formed a defensive perimeter, fighting desperately against wave after wave of convergent structures. They knew their role was simply to buy time. Time for Ilara to implement the solution she alone fully understood. As the Harbinger penetrated the tear, reality itself seemed to shudder. Ilara felt her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of her physical form, interfacing directly with the ship, with the precursor technology, with the dimensional mathematics that governed the barrier between realities. And there, in that impossible space, she confronted the intelligence behind the void convergence, a vast, ancient awareness that had been consuming realities since before the Milky Way had fully formed. No words were exchanged. No conventional communication was possible. Instead, Ilara projected the complete history of sentient life in our galaxy. The struggles, the achievements, the beauty and horror and potential. She showed the intelligence what would be lost if its consumption continued. And in return, she received understanding. The void convergence didn't consume out of malice, but out of nature. A nature that could be redirected toward regions of spacetime that were uninhabited, toward energies that weren't being utilized by sentient species. The negotiation that followed transcended language, transcended time itself. When the Harbinger emerged from the dimensional tear 3 weeks later, the void convergence structures across the galaxy had ceased their attacks. Many had simply vanished. Others remained but had become inert, transforming into structures that seemed to be studying rather than destroying. Ilara Reeves, when she finally addressed the Galactic Council, was changed in ways that defied easy description. Her physical form remained human, but something in her presence, in the light that emanated from her eyes, suggested she had become something more. A bridge between humanity and whatever lay beyond conventional existence. "The war is over," she told them simply. "The void convergence has agreed to withdraw from inhabited space in exchange for access to regions and energies we cannot utilize. They are not our enemies anymore. They never truly were." In the months that followed, the galaxy began the slow process of rebuilding. The Council, humbled by their near extinction and by humanity's essential role in their salvation, honored all the terms Ilara had originally demanded and more. Human representatives were given positions of unprecedented authority within the new galactic government. But for Ilara herself, there was no triumphant return to normal life. What she had become during her confrontation with the void convergence could not be undone. The knowledge she now carried, about the nature of reality, about the true history of the galaxy, about what existed beyond the veil of conventional existence, set her apart from both humans and aliens alike. On the observation deck of the rebuilt Harbinger, now serving as a diplomatic vessel rather than a warship, Ilara stood beside the elder sage of the Muraf, watching the stars. "You knew," she said quietly. "Your species knew what we were created to be." The elder sage's skin rippled with patterns of acknowledgement. "Not specifically, but we remembered stories from our earliest days, stories of those who came before and left guardians behind. We suspected, but we did not know for certain until your abilities manifested. And you still tried to keep us contained, to prevent our awakening." The elder sage's colors shifted to a somber blue. "We feared what might follow. And we were right to fear, though wrong to act as we did. The void convergence might never have noticed humanity if we had simply allowed your natural development. The ancient being turned to study Ilara's luminous eyes. "What will you do now, Commander? You are neither fully human nor precursor nor convergence. You exist at the intersection of all three." Ilara gazed out at the stars, feeling the connections between them in ways no one else in the galaxy could perceive. She sensed the dimensional barriers that separated realities, the flow of energies and possibilities that constituted existence itself. "I will ensure the peace holds," she said simply. "I will remember what vengeance cost us all, and I will make certain that humanity is never used as a weapon again, not by the precursors, not by the Council, not even by ourselves." The elder sage's skin shifted to a color Ilara had never seen before, a deep, resonant violet that seemed to suggest a complex mixture of hope and trepidation. "Then perhaps," the ancient being said, "from the darkest of beginnings, something truly remarkable has emerged. Not merely a weapon, but a conscience for the galaxy." As the Harbinger glided silently through the stars, Ilara considered the path that had led her here. From a simple transport commander seeking vengeance for her family to whatever she had become now. She thought of New Eden, of the billions lost in the war that followed, of the trillions saved by the peace she had negotiated. Vengeance had been the catalyst, but it was choice that had ultimately defined humanity's place in the cosmos. The choice to fight, the choice to protect, and finally, the choice to forgive without forgetting. To move forward while ensuring the past could never repeat itself. In the endless night between stars, that choice shone brighter than vengeance ever could.